Well, hi, Shakina, and
Hi.
congratulations on this episode of Quantum Leap.
Thanks, James.
Really
Appreciate it.
meaningful and touching, but also a lot of fun as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, very happy to finally be talking to you because I know we spoke in LA briefly, and
Yes.
I really want to interview about something. So I'm so glad that this has come up, and it's a
Yeah,
perfect.
me too. I'm so glad we could connect.
So, but before we get onto this episode specifically, I just wondered what your relationship to the original Quantum Leap was. I mean, memories of it. Was it something that you used to
Yeah,
watch, or yeah?
for sure. I was a fan of it, the original series. I remember watching it with my family, like cuddled up on the couch in the living room. It was one of those shows that we would all watch together. And uh, so interesting too to think about how Quantum Leap was kind of ahead of its time when it came to bringing up issues of queerness. There was a really famous episode about Don't Ask, Don't Tell in 1991 that I remember seeing when I was 10 years old, sitting on the couch with my family. And so to now be kind of continuing the legacy of Quantum Leap by introducing this new episode that centers trans kids and their families is feels really full circle.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that because so growing up in the UK, I can remember the living room. It was actually at my friend's house. I remember, where I was sitting on the sofa and watching that episode, and thinking back, it was the first positive gay representation I had encountered. Was
Yeah.
in Quantum Leap, which is kind of surprising. And did you actually go back and watch that episode when you were writing this one, or just you just have memories of it?
I went back and watched a lot of the original episodes when I first started in the writer's room. And it's funny because, we hold on to the good things. There's some aspects that don't age as well. But more than anything, there's like an essential quantum leap quality, you know, that is about hopefulness and brotherhood and unity and you know dissolving difference. And that's sort of like the underlying current that rides through all of Quantum Leap. And I felt like I could just jump right into that. That's my wheelhouse. And so whether it was this particular episode or any of the ways that I've contributed to the other episodes throughout the season, that's the part of Quantum Leap where I'm like, of course I got this job and I'm in this room because this is what I stand for as a person and this is what the show stands for. So that made a lot of sense.
And give me a bit of an insight into your approach to writing episode 12, let them play.
Well, I had pitched this episode in my interview. So I was already kind of brainstorming the moving parts and pieces and the basic character setup. The wonderful thing about Quantum Leap is that every episode we get to tackle a different genre and we get to tell a full story, beginning, middle, end, and you don't get to do that in a lot of episodic TV. So I knew that I wanted to create the episode that felt like everyone's favorite teen sports movie. And I was really interested in like Ladybugs and She's the Man and these sort of gender-based, gender-swapping teen sports movies. Just one of the guys, they're like a real iconic kind of genre. And I think that one of the places that I excel as an artist is taking these familiar forms that people know and love and kind of injecting them with new queerness and like a new kind of critique on what maybe they were embedded in as original, in their original form. So I brought that to the team and I said, like, here's my pitch. It's a teen sports movie in 45 minutes with a trans kid at the center, and then leaps into her dad, who was also her coach. And with that, we went off and running.
Yes. Well, tell us a little bit about Josielyn Aguilera, who plays
Yes.
Dia. Were you involved in the casting? And tell me a bit about what she brings to the central role in the
Yeah,
episode.
we actually had an incredible casting process because not only the role of Gia, but also there are a lot of other trans kids and trans people in the episode. I wanted to make sure that we put out as wide of a casting call as possible, not just for the episode, but also so that trans kids could know that there were opportunities out there for them, and so that NBC could start building a database of trans actors. It's all part of a larger initiative here. And when we had over 200 submissions for the role of Gia, which was so beautiful to see. And I wept through so many of them, these beautiful trans young people putting their heart and soul into these auditions. But Josielyn, and viewers will see this, she just has this radiance in her heart and her smile and her eyes that shines through the camera and the screen. And she's also such like just a down-home girl, you know, and so at ease. And that's what I really wanted to make our audiences feel. Like, this issue is so touchy and hot button, and I just wanted this episode to kind of put people at ease and be like, kids are kids, you know, let's let them have a good time. Let's believe them when they tell us who they are, and let's find ways to show up for them that make their lives safer.
Yeah, because a lot of people, I think, encountering this episode, maybe all they know about trans kids is headlines. And
Yeah.
you know, depending on what news they watch or read, but well, I don't know. Often trans lives are seen as being up for debate anyway, whatever you're
Yes,
reading.
that's right.
You know, so we hear the principals say culture war, and people are talking about this as political and that sort of thing. So I guess to a degree, it's you know, how intentional was that kind of humanizing that and making, like, just think, okay, we're watching this character. These are actually real people. These are real lives. It's not just headlines.
That's right. You know, people can turn on the news if they want headlines. They can go to Reddit if they want to, you know, read theory and opinions. They can watch a TED Talk. But this is Quantum Leap. This is an entertaining, inspirational, thought and heart-provoking show that tries to keep viewers on the edge of their seat because it's a 10 o'clock primetime show, but also tries to kind of make the world a better place episode by episode. And so, you know, the nuance of the storytelling was really about invitation, accessibility, bringing more people to the table. Even the transphobic characters, they grow and they learn, and they're not being judged. You know, we're trying to understand. And I think that's the idea here, is to create this like superhighway of empathy for trans kids and their families, so that we can try and combat some of the harmful, you know, rhetoric and legislation that's being passed, you know, without any understanding of the lived experience.
Yeah. And what was the significance of setting the episode in 2012? Obviously, it needs to be sometime in the past, but
yeah.
Was that particularly significant?
Well, there's a couple things that were interesting about that time period. One, it's sort of like, I mean, it was when Jazz Jennings first made a big splash because she wanted to play basketball at her school. And so that was sort of connected, even though we don't reference it in the episode, but it was like a transcultural moment. Also, you know, my story is such that I grew up as a trans kid in the 90s when there were no trans kids, quite frankly, and it was very dangerous to be a queer youth. And I wanted to show that this has been an issue that we have known about and been working on for a long time. And because we don't have the you know, societal support as trans people, especially for trans youth, we lose track of the progress that we make you know, in the movement, generation by generation, and we reinvent the wheel, and we blame our elders for not doing enough, and we get frustrated the kids for not doing enough, because we don't understand that our cycle of progress keeps getting interrupted by people who wield hatred against us. And I wanted to, in a lot of ways in this episode, lay the path of our history out so that people watching today can understand, whether it's through, you know, what happens in 2012 or through Trace Lysette's monologues, that we have a history of this work and of this fight. And, you know, hopefully people who watch the show will be like, man, we were doing that in 2012. We should really be over this by now. You know, that's the goal. Yeah. So we're rewriting the past to change the future.
Yeah. I say the more we talk about it, the more impressed I am with just how much you packed into that 42 minutes or 45 minutes, whatever it is. But it's just pretty, you know, incredible.
Thank you.
So you mentioned Trace Lysette. I really loved her in this. She plays a sort of youth counselor, Kate, doesn't she? And there is that really touching scene where Kate and Gia are kind of connecting, and Trace's character shares about her past. And why did you want Trace for that role? Did you bring some of her own history into that? Or
absolutely. I mean, Trace, you know, came up through the ballroom house as a voguer, and she also was a basketball player. You know, she's a She's a b-ball girl and a ballroom girl. And I thought there was no one. I mean, she's such a legend to me and a dear friend. And also she's someone who I feel like has been unfairly treated in our industry, I'll just say. I feel like that she faced retaliation for coming out against unfair treatment. And I wanted to honor her by giving her a centerpiece role that just let her be her beautiful, glorious self. So that was a kind of personal, important thing for me, because I just believe in Trace Lysette and I want the world to see more of her. But then in terms of that intergenerational, trans parenting or that sort of like auntie relationship that defines our community, that's not something that we get to see on TV, especially not late night prime time. You know what I mean? And so it felt really important to see these two women of different generations talking about what they've had to go through to be themselves. And I hope that, it can help build some intergenerational bridges, with the viewers.
And Mason Alexander Park's character Ian, who was wonderful in Sandman as well, and Desire. People haven't watched that.
Yes.
But they have a really poignant scene where they talk about attempting to take their own life when they were younger, and but they're also looking at and talking about comparing the past with the future. It can be hard, but there is progress there. And when they're looking at the footage of the trans kids dancing, and they have that line of, trans kids magic, or absolute magic, or something like that. And it made me think about you sort of writing those lines and then getting to see them. I mean, that must be pretty meaningful.
Yeah, I cried a lot. Trans kids are magic. And when you give them permission to shine, they light up a room. That's what Ian says. And it's the truth. And I was that magic trans kid, and I had my light stripped from me, and I had to go through a lot to get that light back. And so did Mason, and so did a lot of other people. And there's literally a generation of, or more, generations of trans young people who we never got to meet, who never got to grow up and share their gifts with the world. And that has to change, because these young people today, they are so gifted and so brilliant, and they see the world in such remarkable ways. And if they don't know they're supported, they might take themselves out of the game. And it's really important for every adult to ensure the life and support of all these kids, trans and cis. And that's Gia has a line that I wrote in the episode. It was like, you're the adults. Why can't you make school safe for everybody? And that's the question that we really should be asking. Mm-hmm. It's not about, should we let this trans kid play on the sports team or not? It's like, why are our schools unsafe? How can we fix that? Those are the questions that adults should be asking. And
meanwhile, they are unsafe in many other ways.
Many ways. Exactly the point. In many ways.
They, genuinely are unsafe, not for these.
Yeah, with gun violence and sexual violence and drugs and, bigotry. It's like, it's our job to define how we educate our youth. And I think this episode kind of takes that on, And
talking about the great cast, you also play Dottie, which is a really fun character. What was she like to play?
Super fun. It's funny because I kind of channeled some Lola from Difficult People and Frankie from Jessica Jones and sort of other behind the counter characters that I've played. But I just felt in such a heavy, hard, emotional episode, we needed some levity, and we needed that Shakespearean clown to just make a fool of herself. And I was like, well, that's me, but also, she does this spoken word piece that has a lot of truth to it, even though it's foolish. And then I got to do, a scene with a couple scenes with Ernie Hudson, who's just such a dreamboat and such an icon of my childhood. So, to be acting with him and making a fool of myself in front of him and Nanrisa Lee was just perfect.
So one last question for you, and it's for your favorite piece of LGBTQ plus culture. So it could be a play, movie, TV show, music, art, or a person who identifies as LGBTQ plus. So just someone or something that's had an impact on you and resonated with you over the years?
I think I have to say Paris is Burning. I'm sure you get that a lot, but Paris is Burning. Yeah, the iconic documentary about the ballroom culture in New York in the 80s that defined a lot of my life and early friendships.
Shakina, thanks so much. Congratulations again on Quantum Leap, and yes, hopefully speak again soon.
Yeah, for sure. Take care. Thank
Bye.
you.